Welcome, everyone, to another great episode of Scott Talk. Today, I've got a very special guest, and his name is Maor Applebaum. He's a legend. He's a mastering engineer, and if you don't know what that is, just think of your favorite album or your favorite song, and think about all the things you love about it, and the sound of the records, of your favorite records, and just think, you know, mastering engineers are the last people to touch that recording before it goes to press. So they have a huge influence on how the album comes out. And I'm super excited to welcome in Maor Applebaum. Hey, man.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on the show. I appreciate it very much.
Originally, were you born in Israel?
Yeah, I lived there most of my life, and I moved here when in my beginning 30s.
Now, did you move out here to do mastering, or did you move out here for a different reason? Or
No, exactly that reason. I wanted to do mastering here and work with bands from here. Back then, it was harder to get work from other places in the world. I mean, there was internet already, but
right?
sending files was harder. I mean, bandwidth was smaller and took hours, and the communications. And now it's just more natural for people to work with people all around the world. And I mean, look at us. I'm not even in your studio. You're not in mine. But guess what? We're connecting and we're making an interview here. So um, today it's much more um, approachable, much more uh, feasible, and also technology lets it happen.
Yeah, thank God, especially in these times, if we could at least see people, even if it's on a computer. You know, you came to America, and where did you come in? Did you move to?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, you're Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Okay,
When I came to America, of course, I landed in New York, and I was there a week, and it was great. I really liked New York. And then I moved to a place called Weed in California, where a producer named Sylvia Massy had a studio there, and I worked for her a while.
was that
Um,
was that that was your first job then?
yeah, that was my first job in America, working for her and doing different studio work, helping out, assisting in sessions or mixing a bit or doing some mastering for stuff or uh, recording a bit, kind of all around stuff in the studio, part of the staff, but I was focusing on mastering as much as I could, but I was doing other stuff as well. And slowly I was trying to get my own clients for mastering, overseas, kind of online. So I was doing the jobs in the studio as part of the staff, and in the meantime, trying to get external mastering jobs from Europe and some from here and wherever I could.
And did you have what kind of did you have to go to school to learn all this studio stuff, or is it just something you've been around your whole life? I'm just kind of wondering how you got the skills that you have.
Mastering is something you kind of learn on yourself. At least back then, there were no courses or anything. You just had to learn from experience and make enough mistakes to learn from them.
Gotcha.
But studio work, some of it I learned before in Israel. In my 20s, I learned. I went to an audio recording school, and I learned some live sound, some recording, and kind of all around.
Okay.
And when I did some of that in Israel, I was a broadcasting engineer for 8 years,
Oh, wow.
and um, and I did recording on my own for my own bands and stuff like that. Then I did some mastering for bands, and I was DJing and also a music journalist, and kind of a I can't say kind of jack of all trades in a way, master of nothing. But I was doing different stuff at different levels, and some were more paying the bills, some were paying the bills as an addition, and some were just dabbling with. And then I moved to the States, worked for Sylvia Massy, and then later on I moved to LA and opened my own facility.
So why don't you explain to everyone what you do? Mastering engineer.
Okay, so mastering is the last part of the process. It's the last stage in production that can affect the results, but it's usually the shortest one in terms of time invested in. Um, it's basically, if you look at this, you have the production and recording where you record the different tracks and base the sound of each one. Then you have the mixing, which is the blending of them at the different levels and sonics and effects and all that. And then the mastering is only the final shape. So think of it as bass, treble, level, uh, um, overall feel. Um, if you go to your car and or in stereo system or even in your um, iPod or whatever it is, you have equalizers,
Right.
so you can add or subtract different frequencies, lows, highs, mids, high mids, low mids, and then some of them have, you can raise the volume and lower the volume, and some of them you can make them wider or narrower, and that's just a very simplistic form, but you can also control how things feel. So if I give you an example that is not audio related, let's say you go to a museum and you look at a picture. The way you look at the picture is and perceive it is not just the picture, it's also the frame and what's be- behind the frame and the lighting. So if you look at a picture and it has a brown frame, it will give you a certain feel. If you have a no frame, just a wall, you'll have a different feel to the picture.
Right.
And if it has a brown frame and a dim light, it will give you a different feel where there's no frame and bright light. Or if you have light coming from different sides, that will emphasize the textures. Um, so mastering is about presentation. So you have the picture as is, but now what's surrounding the picture in terms of lighting, brightness, darkness, framing, and then that will give you a different perception of that picture. That's the same with audio. The way we present the overall feel will make us feel the song differently, not just because of the musicality, but how it surrounds the musicality of the song, how it emphasizes the mix. If you want a more aggressive sound, or if you want a more smooth sound, or you want a bright sound, or darker sound, or a dull sound, or you want to have the textures can just change by how much we equalize the song or level it or compress it or
Right.
saturate it, and it changes the engagement between the listener to the song. It's not going to make a bad song sound better. It's
Right.
just going to make a song feel different, and it might make it more engaging for you. It might make your head move more to it. It might make you want to come back to it. Although you might like other songs as well, but it might make you feel like, oh, I want to feel that song because I don't know, the low end makes me move and it's sparkly, whatever. It helps the perception of it.
It's
And
kind of
and
like it's kind of like putting a bow on top of the present in a way, right?
in a
Like
way, yeah, because then you look at it, it's already more appealing to you. And think
right.
of it this way, you're helping it appeal to the right audience. You're making them connect with the song on another level.
Yeah.
And also, you're making it translate better on different systems like speakers, headphones, um, different music platforms. It gives you a more consistent sound where certain things will work good on a certain amount of systems, but after mastering, it will translate better.
Right.
So it has the artistic side, as we mentioned, in the presentation and engagement, and it has a technical side of consistency and translation. And a mastering engineer, he's objective to the music because he didn't work on it before. So
Right.
he can bring a fresh and new perspective to it. And that comes with, with listening to it for the first time and trying to make it fit to what a fan would be listening to because you're the fan at that moment you're listening to it, but you got a bit of control on how the results will come out.
Now, do you get any input on like song order or anything like that? Or is it like, here's the record, um, master it, or, because part of your thing is to make the album flow and feel like it's all one piece, right? So is there ever any input on that, or is that done by the band, or?
Well, we master different formats, right? So we can
Right.
master a single, and in that case, it's the song as is, no other songs. We can master a mini LP or an EP or a maxi, whatever you want to call it, but you can master a combination of a few songs or a full LP, a record of a bunch of songs or a compilation or a DVD or a live show album. Um, Whatever you're working on, you make it fit, as I said, artistically and also technically. Um, and you want to keep a certain feel throughout the record in terms of consistency and cohesiveness between the songs. Um, I get the song order from the band or label, whoever is responsible for that. There were times that we changed the running order based on the feels of the song and how the sonics were to make them sound more cohesive. So we moved songs around.
Okay.
Um, I can give input if I hear there's an issue, and I can mention that. And if they want to change or not, that's their own decision. But basically, I get fed from them the running order that they want me to work with.
Okay. Now,
Same, the names of the record, the name of the song, all that is information that's brought to me.
do you ever get like special requests from any band members saying like, "Hey, can you bump up my bass," or anything like that? Does anyone, or maybe the band wants a certain, like, maybe they want like a richer sound, or a fuller, more bassier sound, like In Utero or something like that, Nirvana. That almost really bassy, and they recorded it that way on purpose. Even though they had millions of dollars to spend in the studio, they wanted a certain sound. Do you get a lot of bands saying, "I want, like more of like a classic kind of feel to this song," or "I want this song to really just kick you in the face," or is that just totally up to you, and they just go, "It's in your hands, Maor. You take care of it."
So initially, there's a conversation. I like to ask questions. Some people have something in mind already that they want, and I respect that, and I want to hear what they want so I can apply that while I'm working. In other cases, they'll go by do your thing, go by your intuition, do your thing, go by your intuition. Sorry. Um, and let's see how it sounds. Now in some cases, based on the input they give me from beginning and my intuition, I'll give them something that they like. In other cases, uh, either they don't give me input and I go by my intuition, or even with them, I'll give them something, and if they like it, great, but if they want any changes, I'll hear what they want. In some cases, their changes can be really cool, and I think they're beneficial, and I'll add them. In other cases, the requests are maybe less good, but they're workable and we can do it and it doesn't damage much. So I'm cool with that. Why not? It works. In other cases, their ideas are not damaging, but they're not maybe improving as much, but that's their taste.
Yeah.
So we go with that as well. Um, as long as like there's either an improvement with what they suggested, which can be, or can be not an improvement and not a degradation, In some cases, it might be a degradation, but still in the realms of sounding good, but maybe less good than before, but it works.
Okay.
It
Very.
doesn't damage big time. And in other cases, their requests are not that great at all. Then they're like, not that great was a nice way to say it, but they were actually bad. In that case, I would tell them what I think and let them make a decision after I uh, involve them more of my thoughts regarding that. And if they decide to take my advice, great. If not, I take what they say and I'll do it. And
Gotcha.
then, it's their record. They got to live with it.
Right.
So um, I'll respect their decisions and do what they want. But like I said, it could be a combination of things, and it could be just either one of the options I suggested. Um, I always prefer giving feedback than not to, because if I give the feedback telling them what I think, at least they have the opportunity to think twice about the request if it's crucial for them or not. And at the end of the day, they make the decision. I just do what they want. But there are times where it's great for them in the beginning, how it is. Um, so
Yeah.
whatever comes in, well, I'll work with it.
Okay.
And
Great.
and I'm not saying I'm always right. Like, it could
Yeah,
be
I
that
gotcha.
idea that's really, really good. I was like, yeah, you know what? It sounds really good with it. So I'm open to that. It's a collaboration team effort.
Cool. Let's talk about some of the bands and artists that you've worked with. I mean, there's been so many. A few of them that caught my eye with bands like Faith No More, Dokken, Black Swan. Was he a Starset, which my daughter and I both love. Rob Halford from Judas Priest. I mean, just the list goes on. Um, what tell us some. Do you get to meet the artists? I'm assuming most of the time, right? I mean, I saw a video with you with David Ellison from Megadeth, and you guys were talking about mastering, and that was really fun. So I imagine you get to meet a lot of these artists, right?
Well, only some actually.
Really?
Yeah, like Faith No More. I've done with them the comeback album they did in 2015. It's called Sol Invictus. And I did a few singles from it as well. Besides the album, I did three of the singles that came out, and then I remastered the first album they've done, We Care a Lot. It's called the Deluxe Band Edition. Um,
Oh,
you can find it online. It's the same album, We Care a Lot, but the Deluxe Band Edition, it's the whole album remastered plus bonus material and demos and live stuff and different mixes. So
I've seen that. I've seen that, and I thought, wow, I didn't know that was you at the time. I saw, I'm just now remembering that I've seen that in the past. Wow, that's awesome.
so it was only that album that in the back catalog that I did because they own the master rights for it and they own the masters itself. Um, so with Faith No More, I actually got to meet them. The whole band I got to meet when I went to see their shows, but Billy, the bass player, and he's the producer. Also, him and I worked on a few projects already, and we met years ago, and he was here in the studio. So, um, so we know each other for a while. Um, Eric Gales, for example, I've done 3 albums with him. I've done Good for Something, Middle of the Road, and The Bookends. And Eric, I met years ago. I saw him live a few times and did three albums with him. Um, in Starset, I actually met them at a show much later.
Oh,
So I only met them at a show later on, but I did that record, the first record, Transmissions. I did
yeah,
that in 2000,
14, yeah,
right? I
yeah.
remember. With Yes, the band Yes, I've done 6 albums one was a studio album and 5 live albums. Um,
Oh, wow.
I
Yes,
got
I
to meet,
love them. Wow.
I got to meet them, and I'm trying to think. I got to meet them after I worked with them. I did see their shows, but I met them later on. Although their bass player that replaced Chris Squire, Billy Sherwood,
Yeah.
uh, Billy and I have worked together for a lot of years. We've done like more than 30 albums together. So
Wow.
he and I already known each other for quite a long time and worked together on so much stuff. So um, he mixed all those records, um, but but he started playing bass live with them on the third record I've done. So the studio album I've done was with Chris Squire, and then 2 live albums I've worked on that was Chris Squire. Then on the third, on the fourth album I've done with them, which is the third live album, that's when he started playing bass for them. Um,
Yeah,
so
Chris Squire is one of my favorite bass players. Rickenbacker guy, just like me, and McCartney. I love McCartney. Man, that what was he like? What's Chris like, man? Like in person, just average,
I did.
everyday, nice guy, or did you not meet Chris?
Well, I met him again.
Like,
Because I only do mastering. I'm not recording or mixing,
yeah,
especially not recording where you actually sit with the band a lot.
right.
So I didn't really have much talks except met them like at a show and you know hi bye you know
Okay,
quite quick. You can, hi, nice to meet you. I'm the guy who mastered, or I'm
okay,
getting produced. This is the guy who mastered the record. So it's not that I know these band members much, except the people who I actually work directed with, like for example Billy Sherwood, which, like I said, we've done more than 30 records together, or Billy from Faith No More, which besides Faith No More, we've done his other project, The Talking Book, and we've done a few other projects with bands that he worked with. So, that's kind of the situation.
yeah,
For example, like with Meatloaf, I've done a record for Meatloaf, and I met him at a show, but the person who I was, in touch with and working this was Paul Crook, who was his musical director and the
okay,
producer of the album and the touring musical director too. So you mentioned Dokken. So with Dokken, I only mastered the record. So again, it's with mastering because it's such a small but important part of the project.
yeah,
Of the whole production. But it's the last one, so it's there's very little engagement in terms of working with the people. Sometimes you work with them, in remote or but again, in a lot of cases the band hears the material but is less involved all the time. um, with for example, there's a project like you mentioned, David Ellison. I know Dave for a lot of years, and we've worked together a lot. I mastered his band F5. I did his second album for F5, and then throughout the years I've mastered different material of his. um, Recently he released an album for his own band called Ellison. It was a cover album called No Cover. It was
yeah,
like 80s and 70s, and rock and metal stuff. And
yeah.
I mastered that record.
Oh,
And
nice.
so David and I know each other for years. Um, the interview you saw was probably an interview we did in 2009 or something like that. Years, of knowing
Very,
each
very cool. Yeah, I guess not everyone's such a control freak like me. I I'd want to be on every step of my record until it was like pressed.
Well, it's not a control freak. Some people like to be more involved. It's not,
Yeah.
like it's just observing it. It's not a control freak. Control freak is a different thing. But again, like you know, um, some people are more involved in a project, and they want to listen to different stages. Some people want to be less involved.
Yeah.
They just want to be, okay, it's done, it's good, okay, I'm cool, and some people like to be more part of a project, like more involved with giving feedback. So
Right.
don't call yourself a control freak if you're not a control freak. Just because you're interested in knowing and hearing, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I keep asking you about, how many guys have you met and all that, because I imagine, putting myself in that position, I could see it both ways. I could see myself going, you know what? My parts are recorded. It's mixed. I'm done. I'm going home. That's it. I'm not going to think about this again. Um, but then there's that other side of me. It's like, look, I've made it this far. There's one last step. Let me talk to this guy and make sure that we're on the same page. So that's why I keep asking you about, how many people have you met and how many people have special requests and stuff like that, because I could see myself being one of those people.
Well, there's a lot of them. I met a lot of people. I worked with a lot of people,
Yeah.
and some of them I might not meet, but they'll send me an email or give me a phone call, and tell me what they want, and we'll work that way. You know, to me, it's always cool. If people are involved, that's great. It doesn't matter if it's a big name or small name or medium name. If they're involved and they care, that's totally fine. I would like them to hear what I'm sending them. I would like them to approve, or if not, tell me what they want. It's part of the process. There's nothing wrong in being involved. It's
Right.
your art. You can do so. But yeah, I met a lot of people. I probably worked with more than I met.
Okay.
Okay, there's a lot of records, and
Yeah.
not that I met, but
Yes.
and there's a lot of records that have collaborative people in it. Like there's records that you have guest musicians. Some of them were like legendary, but I never met them,
Yeah.
or I met them in an event or something. But again, they weren't here sitting with me.
Right. Well, what are some of your like favorite bands to listen to when you're not working? Like of your own free will.
Well, because I'm so uh, deep into what I do,
Yeah.
a lot of times I'll prefer after working not to listen to music. I'll
Gotcha.
prefer having the music in my head because I'm so into what I'm doing. Like your mind is not as free after that.
Yeah, you got to. I guess you got to get away for a little while, huh? So, what do you do for fun then? Watch movies or go for a jog, or what do you do to get your mind off the music so you can refresh and reset for the next day?
Well, first of all, I never get my mind off the music. That's why I said I a lot of times don't hear music after, like don't listen to music afterwards. And of course, there are times where I'll drive and I'll turn on the radio and listen to stuff. But in general, I'm a father of two kids, so and I also have a dog, and so I finish work, you know, or in between, I'll take a break. I'll be with them, me and my wife will talk about stuff, when you say about fun stuff, I don't want to sound boring, but I like what I'm doing so much that keeps me very occupied. Um, Even when I don't work on the mastering, I'll work on the next step. Like, what do I do next? How do I bring things in? How do I improve my
Gotcha.
skills? How do I improve the sound? How can I invest more in my clients? How can I make them sound better? It's always keeping me occupied. Um, in the past, I was doing music. In the past, I had bands. In the past, I was doing other stuff to keep me enjoying other stuff too. But today, I don't feel I need too much stuff to be
Yeah.
like other hobbies. If you know, I'm not saying I won't I won't go for a walk, or I'll go with my kids to a place well, pre-COVID,
Right. I know. Yeah. Don't feel bad about not living some exciting rock star life. I pretty much do this podcast and sit at home. I do pretty much nothing else. I'm terrified to go out pretty much, unless I have to. I just don't, I used to love walking around stores and window shopping and just kind of being out and playing with my band and, meeting new people, and all that's gone now. So it's an adjustment for everyone. But, yeah, don't say you're boring, because if I'm boring, I'll tell you the things I do. That's boring, but
Well, you're not boring if it doesn't bore you.
so you're out in LA and your place is called Maor Applebaum Mastering.
Yes. And I also have another name, Radiant Mastering, and that's kind of part of a other thing I'm doing. But yeah, it's Maor Applebaum Mastering, and I'm located in LA. The work comes in from all over the world via internet.
Yeah.
So if you
Sawanda,
want to do it there and bring a flash drive or a hard drive.
can you talk a little bit about how recording has changed? Well, mastering has changed since the invention of MP3s and WAV files and all that different stuff that you have to master now, as opposed to maybe in the 70s where you just had to do a record. Now you've got a lot of different formats. Do you have to master each one of those formats, or is it you just do the master recording and then someone else sends off the other files? How does that all work?
Well, back in the day, it was different tapes, and you would take different tapes and arrange them, align them, make them fit. And then you would cut a record through that, a vinyl.
Right.
Then with and some of it went to cassette as well. And then with digital, even though back then it was still tapes, you would take that and create a digital format that will go to later on to a special digital format that will later on be passed on to a pressing plant to make a CD. And then so you were taking analog material, converting to digital,
Right.
and having it stored in a certain medium. Then later on with digital, you had different digital mediums, and you would convert them to analog to process them back to digital, or keep them in the digital domain. But you would have different formats, and you would also store them in one format that will go to create CDs. Then in time, a lot of these physical formats started to go away, and then you're left with WAV formats, the WAV files. I mean, MP3s can be made from WAV files, and also WAV files can be converted from MP3, which is a less good format. But what happened is slowly, it moved from physical format to a format that can be stored physically on a hard drive, flash drive, or even through on clouds. But it became the same format as a WAV file, whether it's a mix or a master. Now it's the same format.
Yeah.
The only difference is the processing you apply to it, where before it was different formats gathered in one format.
Okay.
So, so when I get the mixes coming in, mostly they come as WAV files. I process them, using the hardware and software.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Great view.
The desk with the gear and the software, and then I send it out, and it stays as a WAV format, or if I make an MP3 of it as well.
So would that be an analog console you have there? Or is that
analog? Yeah, some of it is digital as well, but most of it is analog here. Yes.
Okay? You're old enough to remember, vinyl records, right? And the unique sound that they have. Now, being someone who masters records for a living, what is it, in your opinion, about vinyl that so many people love over, CDs or any other format, really?
It's a good question because a lot of it doesn't have to do with sound, really. A lot of it has to do with some of it will say that, but see, um, in vinyl, it's very hard to do quality control because once the files, the masters are ready, they go to somebody who cuts them, and in the cutting, things can go bad too.
Okay.
So I can do something here that sounds really good, and then when it's cut, it might sound less good. Okay, depends on who's cutting it, the gear, the choices. There's still stuff happening in the cutting for vinyl because it's a physical format that has specific requirements. And even there, they can change things based on their taste or technical abilities of the gear. And after that, it needs to be plated and then pressed. And so all that process can degrade the results. And a lot of masters for vinyl today are transfers for vinyl. They're transferring from what's existing. Not everything is mastered originally for vinyl. So when it's originally for vinyl, the mastering, then they actually build it to fit the format, not just by transferring it, but actually making adjustments per song, like really uh, doing it in real time. Where in a transfer, they'll take it and in real time they might adjust it to fit the needs, but it's not going to be optimized as the same way if it was mastered for vinyl from the get-go. Both ways will work the best they can to do those, the cutter, and they'll work, with what they can. Maybe saying the best they can is not the right word, but because the best to their abilities with the time given and the budget or whatever. Okay, there's circumstances and reasons behind things. But um, if you master from vinyl from the beginning, it will be a bit different. A bit, not a bit, actually, it will be different than if you just do a transfer to vinyl.
Gotcha.
But even a transfer to vinyl, has things that need to be done for it to make it better. And different cutters will make different masters with different results. Some of them,
Now, when you say cutters and cutting the album, you're talking for people that don't know?
cutting the lacquer, it's on a lathe. Cutting engineers are mastering engineers, but they
Okay.
specialize in the vinyl. So they have a lathe to cut vinyl.
Okay.
The reason I'm mentioning the word cutting engineers is because if I say mastering engineers, then it puts me in the same category.
Okay.
But they're in a category that they specialize as well. They might be also they're mastering engineers, but they also specialize in vinyl cutting because they have the equipment and the knowledge and experience to work it. I don't have a lathe. I don't cut the vinyl. I prep stuff for vinyl. I've
Yeah.
mastered to go to a vinyl cutter, but I am not the cutter. So cutting engineers take what I give them and they adjust it to fit the medium.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you
They're
for.
mastering engineers that take it to the next step in terms of the cutting. They
Okay.
cut the lacquer, and the lacquer is cut on a lathe and then sent to plating and then to pressing.
Okay.
And in all three stages, things can go wrong. Now, you ask why people go for vinyl now. Vinyl is bigger than a CD.
Yeah.
You're going to be holding that vinyl, you know, and it has a different sound than MP3s and streaming. Although CDs do sound different than streaming and MP3s in a way,
Right.
but the difference, there is a difference. But with vinyl, there's a bigger difference. Even though vinyl might be limited in certain sonics, compared to the original recording, but it has a sound to it. Plus, when you say, "Oh, I'm pulling out a record and putting it on a record player," that's something that is kind of bringing itself again. You know, even cassettes have started to come up again,
Yeah,
small amounts, but
kind of a
up to that were done on that were released also on cassettes.
yeah, the cassette thing is very nostalgic to me. I, I'm sorry, but I don't want to play a cassette ever again. Like rewinding it, trying to find the beginning of the song. I don't know why people would want to deal with that. You know, um,
I can understand it because some people like they had older brothers or sisters and they were listening to cassettes and one day they go to the room and they open a drawer and they see all these cassettes.
yeah,
They're like, wow, these bands, I know of them or I haven't heard of them or I know some. I want to experience what my brothers were experiencing when they heard it. And
gotcha.
they
Okay,
go to the room, they put it in, they press play and stuff. So
yeah.
that's how they listen.
Yeah, I guess I missed the tape thing. I when I grew up, it was the records. When I was a kid, my brother, uh, about 4 years older than me, had records. My dad had records. My mom had records. And tapes was more or less like junior high school, sixth grade, maybe for me, when those kind of got really popular. And then I was really late. I did cassettes for a really long time before I switched over to CDs because the car I had I had a tape player. And so I was like, well, I've got, I just keep buying cassettes because I'm always in the car driving around. So I think my first CD I ever bought um, was actually the Bullet Boys' first album. Um, I, I I don't know why that I chose that one. It just that was the first CD I ever bought, and then I caught up. Got all my Beatles stuff and all that later. But yeah, it's interesting the way you mention, the way you talked about the differences and how the sound is generated, how you get it on the vinyl versus you know like when you already have it digitally stored, and then yeah, pressing it to the vinyl changes the sound. That's really cool. I
Back in the
never
day, those tapes that were in real time, played one tape and then, one song and you were cutting it. And then in the meantime, you were setting up the second song. And then when the first song ends, you start putting the second song in, and then you're setting up the third song, and you're slowly bringing it in when it ends, and setting up the fourth song, and then it was a real time procedure when you were moving between the songs. It's acrobatics for sure.
Wow, that is crazy. What current projects are you working on?
Right now, I've done a few. Say it's called OSTs, original soundtracks. It's what you release after, let's say, a movie or a video game is out. So I've done a few video games OSTs. One of them is called Siberia 4,
Oh, cool.
and I've done OST for a TV show uh, from Israel called Judah, Juda.
Okay.
So the OST is probably going to come out this month or next month. I don't know, but I done that. What else? I did some singles for the band Sabaton, which I've worked with them in the past. I've done an album for them and some singles and so like that. And I did a Dream Theater Christmas medley single.
Okay.
And what
Yeah,
else?
Dream Theater's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pleasure working on that.
I
Amazing.
for, I forgot to mention them. Yeah, that was one of the bands that well, I was like, whoa, you did those guys too? Whoa.
I only did the single of that, the Christmas single medley. Uh,
Right.
uh,
Still, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, still.
no, of
It's
course. I'm
awesome.
saying it was a pleasure doing that. Um, and I also did the Prague Collective 3, which is Billy Sherwood's kind of a super group where he brings different guests. Um, trying to remember. I did a live DVD for the band Horror Pops, which is kind of like rockabilly, maybe popabilly, if you want to call it.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of them.
She's a singer and an upright bass player, and then there's a guitar player. And a
Oh,
drummer.
okay.
I worked with a different band that has the guitar player is actually a singer and bass player. The band Nekromantix. Trying to remember what else I've done.
So you're not just limited to just, studio musicians and records. You can do TV, you can do video games, you can do commercials, you can do anything then.
Yeah, I've done some OSTs for movies. There was a movie, We Die Young, with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I did the OST for that.
Oh, I saw that movie.
Well, so a friend of mine is the composer.
Wow.
So yeah, so I did that. I did a few more movies. I have to remember which ones. So it's the OSTs that came out later, and then video games, a few of them, and I've done spots where they appear in movies, like there's a small half a minute or a minute track that somebody did. So I mastered that, and then it's in the movie.
Cool.
And yeah, so I'm not just limited to records per se. Some of it is library music that goes to be synced.
Very cool, man. Well, you've got a great, very cool career going for you. Really happy that you're doing what you love. You're one of the unsung heroes in the music industry, and I really appreciate you being on the show. Can you give everyone your website again?
Sure. You can find me online at maorapplebaum.com. It's www.maorappelbaum.com, maorapplebaum.com, or Maor Applebaum Mastering, or just Google my name, Maor Applebaum.
Okay. Yeah, I will. I'll put that link in the description of the video, and I'll put all your links in there, buddy. And Maor, thank you very much for being on Scott Talk, man. I had a good time. I learned a lot, and it's been my pleasure, man. Come back anytime.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me as well, and I'll be happy to come back. Just invite me, and I'll be there. Just a few words to the audience.
Yeah.
I know that nowadays COVID has hit hard a lot of people, and some got hit more, some less. Some actually their businesses were booming, or things were different. But it's important that we all stay strong, stay positive, be kind to each other, be respectful, understand that communications is key, and not everything will work immediately. Some stuff needs to be talked and explained and confronted. But to get to greatness, you got to do more. To achieve results, sometimes you got to go the extra miles. And
yeah,
just being good to people is the beginning, and it helps.
Very, very wise words from a very wise man. Yeah, everybody, respect each other, take care of each other, hold each other up, quit putting everybody down. Maor Applebaum, thank you very much, man. Again, pleasure having you on the show. We'll have you back soon, man. Another month or two, maybe. So yeah, man, I appreciate it. I learned a lot. Yeah.
You're welcome. It was great for me too. Thank you.
Everyone, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Share with your friends, and also we're streaming on all major platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. We're all over. So find us, check us out, and we'll appreciate it. And we will see you next time.